Hey, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Good evening. Welcome to 1871. Can I get a raise of hands? Who is this your first time to be at 1871? Love the new faces. How about your first time to be at a Courageous Minds Only event? Love the new faces. How about repeaters? Who's been to one of these before? Okay, so challenging everybody that just raised their hand that said this was your first Courageous Minds Only event. Come back next time and bring a friend. We love our growing community here. I was thinking about this and I meant to ask you, Jason, before I got on the stage, is this entering our third year?
I think it is.
Kind of amazing.
It is amazing.
So this has become this wonderful community of events that separates from the normal business talk, that goes away from the traditional ways that we convene, and it's awesome. So for those that are new to 1871, we are a global innovation hub that inspires, equips, and supports early stage founders all the way to the Fortune 50 to build extraordinary businesses. So if you are a founder, if you work at a startup, if you work at a corporate, and you're just interested about innovation, we have a spot for you. So we have programs, community resources. We meet you at the stage that you're at to help you in your journey. And this is one of our community events. So with that, I'm going to introduce Jason Hauer to introduce our amazing panelists.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I appreciate you. Thanks everybody for being here. And then in terms online as well. So we have a virtual audience. So just, I know everybody's busy. Appreciate you being here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jason Hauer, co-founder of the Garage Group and then founder of the Courageous Minds Only community. The Garage Group is innovation consultancy, really with a mission of helping big companies and leaders keep their brands relevant in the face of uncertainty, to do innovation work, brand work, category work, et cetera. And then we created the Courageous Minds Only community really to bring leaders together, but to give all of you courage, inspiration, and ideas as you're looking to build the future of your careers and your businesses in an uncertain world. And we have a fantastic panel here tonight. We'll get into introductions here in a minute, but with Rissa, Jamie, and Dujan can share more about their backgrounds. If you've been a part of one of these before, you heard me say this, but I'll say it again for the new folks. Think of tonight as a moment, right? I don't want you to just show up and just kind of just passively listen. I want you to really thoughtfully consider this being a moment for yourself tonight of hearing something that you can start applying tomorrow to have a significant impact on yourself, whether it's your career, a brand you're building, company you're building, a challenge that you're wrestling through. You're going to hear moments of courage in their careers. You're going to hear leadership superpowers that you could borrow, or it might inspire you to tap into yours more. You're going to hear about trends and things that are happening that you may be able to be like, hey, I can apply that to my brand or my business, right? But think about tonight as a moment and don't just observe and listen. Actively seek out what is the thing that I can apply in my life starting tomorrow or even tonight if you may be on a different time zone or something. So that sound good? All right. Well, let's dive in. Thank you all for being here. I would love, in Courageous Minds Only fashion, to start with just share, obviously, names and that sort of thing, and your titles and companies that you're from. But would love to hear a moment that you had to tap into courage in your career or your life. And we'll just start the conversation there. Jamie, you want to kick us off?
I'm Jamie Rotnicki, and I lead innovation at Molson Coors. So product innovation, packaging innovation for the Americas. I've been with the company for about just a little over 3 years, started during the pandemic. Really interesting and hard time to make a career change. And if I think about a moment where I had to be courageous, prior to coming to Molson Coors, I was in the wine business for nearly 15 years. And I climbed the ladder doing different jobs, starting as an AMM in marketing, working my way up to vice president and leading a portfolio of brands. And I had reached a point in my career where I was I'd say cruising, I'd kind of hit my stride, was, knew what I was doing, built brands, resuscitated brands, managed relationships with suppliers, was having fun. It wasn't uncomfortable. And the owner of the company at the time came into my office one day and he's like, hey, I need you to run our spirits division. I was like, nope, hard no. I don't want to do that. No, thank you. It's a mess. Business is down. It's not a priority for the company. The portfolio's all over the place. Why would I want to do that? Like, I like what I'm doing over here. He's like, yeah, but I need you to do this. And I'm like, nope, find somebody else. And after much convincing, and him telling me that I can't really fall out of a hole, I decided to do it. And I'm so glad I did. It was probably one of the hardest shifts that I've ever made. I had to switch gears and go from like working on established brands to creating a startup within a company, essentially like fighting for attention within the company and externally, making a profit. These brands weren't making a profit. They were all down. Suppliers were unhappy, all of those things. And I'd say probably the hardest part of it was I was going from managing and leading marketers to also leading salespeople, which is a whole different skill set. And so I'm so glad that I ultimately said yes to the ask, because it prepared me in ways that I didn't even expect to be prepared for the job that I'm doing today. So always say yes, even when it's hard. And it's something you don't want to do.
I love that, and that's a fantastic reminder. Rissa, how about you?
Hi, my name is Rissa Redden, and thank you so much to Stephanie and to Jason for inviting me to join this evening. I serve as Chief Marketing Officer and partner at West Monroe, and marketing is often described as one part art and one part science. I was born on the Upper West Side of Manhattan to a father with a PhD in inorganic chemistry and a mother who is an artist with perfect pitch. So I'm literally one part art and one part science, and have always loved marketing. I'm at West Monroe, which is focused on helping companies become more digital and to drive lasting financial value for the business. And something that I did to step out onto the ledge, if you will, when I joined West Monroe, is creating a podcast series that's called This is Digital. And I was new to the company and new to a lot with stepping into this new role. And it was really putting myself out there in a way that was scary. And I remember we put this big program together. It's a big advertising push. It's the whole thing. And we recorded our first episode with the CEO of Taco Bell. And I remember turning to the team and I said, I think this is going to be pretty good. And they were looking at me like, oh my gosh, that's terrifying, because we have got investment in this whole thing. And you just now are thinking that this is going to be good. But it's been terrifying and a lot of fun. And I agree with the sentiment that if you're scared, you probably should do it.
I love it. Like, yeah. When you're experimenting too with anything new, you don't know how it's going to end up, right? So it's good. I love that. Dujan?
Hopefully you can hear me. I love to hear about your mom having perfect pitch, because I was a classically trained baritone singer, but my voice is completely gone because I spent the last week of January in Costa Rica, Puerto Vida, and probably screamed a little bit too much. So I'm going to be keeping it even till tonight. But Dujan Smith, I lead Accenture's Global Black Founders Development Program, which means I have the fun and exciting job of helping Black founders in the enterprise tech space get cash and contracts from Fortune 500s, which is a great passion purpose intersection moment for me. And I always tell people by night, outside of enterprise tech, I work in beauty and CPG. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a new sun care brand called My Black Skin, which is the official sunscreen of the NFL, which is really exciting. And just being able to help launch that brand tied to my roots with Soho House. To answer your question earlier, or just around courageous moments, it really probably was around that. I have been an entrepreneur. It's been a a thread that's been running in parallel to my corporate endeavors. I was a tax accountant in Deloitte, worked and ran collateral management for a $25 billion hedge fund in LA. I did casting for the longest time for CBS and Viacom. But I always tell people I've done a lot of different things to get to the path that I'm on right now. But it was always around this journey to find that passion, purpose intersection for, and I finally found it with Accenture in my day job, and then at night, really doing work to educate specifically men of color and people of color holistically on the importance of sun care and protection so that we don't get skin cancers and melanomas, because I am Jamaican. If you didn't know, Bob Marley did die from skin cancers and melanoma, so I want to make sure that we decrease those rates. But yeah, that's me.
I love it. Shifting gears a little bit, I'd love to tap, like, I think as we go along in the conversation, I'd love to start with more mindset stuff, and then we'll get into some of the market level trends and that sort of thing that they're working on. But I'd love to start with when you were stepping out, whether it's launching the skincare brand, stepping into the spirits division, just even stepping into this new role, this big new, like, external marketing engine. What drove you to say yes to do that, to say yes, okay, I'll take the new role and I'm going to drive and do the podcast and put myself out there? What deep down led you to want to pursue that, and or for you to change your mind and actually pursue it? Yeah.
For me specifically, I was just blessed and honored to have the opportunity to travel so much in my early years. I've been able to live, work, travel to 55 countries. So I've just seen a lot of cool things around the world and the experiences that folks that look like me have across the diaspora. And in this particular entrepreneurial endeavor with My Black Skin, I was sitting for a while, and this was like my third entrepreneurial endeavor. I was like, oh, Dejan, do you want to do this again? You could be putting this money into your 401k, your IRA. You got family to take care of, nieces and nephews. But for me, I was like, I feel a calling to this space. And at the end of the day, life is going to go on. I've seen people with literally nothing from a materialistic standpoint be the happiest individuals on this earth. So God forbid this next entrepreneurial endeavor goes south, I'm still going to be fine. I'm still supported and I have community around me. And for me, it's really just all around a mindset shift, to say yes to yourself, to believe within yourself, to know that you have the power to make your wildest dreams come true. And I'd say the reason I was able to have that really stems from not just the mindset that I have internally, but the community that I've cultivated around me externally that gives me that freedom and space to really operate, to say yes to opportunities that I am scared to even pursue.
One quick follow-up and then we'll keep going. I think just in past conversations, one thing I really appreciate about you is just a deep sense of understanding of purpose and then external alignment in terms of what you get into professionally. Can you say more about that in terms of how that kind of reflection time and connection there helps influence some of the stuff you get into and then drives that courage, the conviction, kind of the resilience to stay with it?
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of just self-care work with myself. I mean, therapy, mirror work, talking to myself daily to just instill and making sure that my subconscious and my self-esteem is where it needs to be so that I can operate where I want to externally. And I always just set intentions for myself, like daily, monthly, quarterly. Like, Dejan, what do you want to accomplish? How do you want to feel? How do you want to make people that are around you feel? And in doing that work and then checking back in on how did today go? How did last week go? That trip that you had in Costa Rica, what came of that? And I think in just having those retrospectives like we would on a work project or anything we do, we also got to do that with ourselves internally to just know and to allow ourselves to move through this earth with purpose.
Love that.
Can I add to, I think it's so interesting to think about finding your purpose, and it can be a little intimidating, like, well, how do I find it? Where do I look for that? And I remember doing an exercise years ago that you just reminded me of, where it's an audit of your energy.
Yep.
And what gives you energy, what takes away your energy, because that's going to set you on that path to find your purpose.
You do. I feel like life is always so crazy and busy, right? We're always hustling and bustling, and you've taken the time to actually say like, how do I feel? How did I show up in those moments? And like checking in with yourself is big.
I'm curious for the two of you, and maybe this can segue into sharing more about just your mindset as you were pursuing things, but how much does your mindset and connectedness to both purpose, but also just like conviction for what you're doing factor into one, having the courage to take a risk or to stay with it or to be resilient in times of like challenge? You want to jump in there?
Yeah, I can start. For me. If I don't believe and I'm not aligned to the values, the mission, whatever it is that, you know, a company, an organization, a team has, I just can't get with it. Like, if I'm being totally honest. And so I think there's like there's a gut that I have, right? In terms of like, how does it feel? Like, do I feel like this is in alignment with things that are important to me, things that I value, things that, from a moral standpoint and ethical standpoint, I'm aligned with? And so that's just a thread that I have, like when I make choices about taking roles, you know, going to companies, et cetera, that's really important. And it wasn't always that way. I kind of learned the hard way by finding myself in positions that there wasn't that alignment. And so I think you have to really listen to yourself and your spirit and your body. And, you know, most of us aren't working for charity, particularly where we're in the private sector. We're doing it to earn a living. And we have choices, right, of where we go and where we spend our time. We're spending a lot of time at work. And, you know, one of the things that, you know, in the last 3 years that I've really appreciated about Molson Coors is feeling that really tight alignment to myself and where the company values are. And I think that is motivating for me. You have people that work with you that have those similar values in terms of the things that, you know, they're aligned to. And so that's been a big kind of like centering thing for me, I think, as I continue to climb in my career.
Rissa, how about you? Like, I think you can take that and continue it, or we can go back to just what led you to kind of step out on the ledge and then kind of take the risk of both taking the role, but then the high profile launch of the podcast and just putting yourself out there.
I think that a question that I wish I would have asked myself when I was younger is, why not me? Why not? I mean, there are all sorts of reasons why, you know, you could choose not to do something, but why not do it and see where it takes you? And I think that often in panels, I find myself in the sort of non-traditional career path storyline, which I think is far more interesting.
Yeah.
To have pivots and to learn as you go and to try different things. I think that's far more interesting than starting and rising through just one organization. So I like the twisty turny path, I guess.
As we were like preparing for this conversation, one of the topic areas we got into was kind of your superpower as it relates to both from a leadership perspective, but I believe like when you have confidence and conviction, it actually leads to being able to be courageous in a way. And I'm curious, as you kind of reflect on just your leadership and the things that you've decided to jump into courageously, how is your superpower kind of manifested itself? And I would just share this with the group too, of this is either an example of like a superpower you could borrow and apply to yourself, and or a call to action to say, am I kind of sleeping a little bit, and is my strength, my superpower being underutilized, and I could kind of reignite myself if I did that, right? So just I'm curious. You want to jump
Sure,
in
I'm
there,
happy to
Rissa?
jump in.
Yeah.
I would love that. Thank you. If I were a superhero, I would be Connector Woman. And the origin story dates back to being a kid and feeling like an outsider and moving to a new town and walking into a classroom and not having any friends. And because of that, I go the opposite direction where I want to bring people together because we are all stronger together. And whenever I'm feeling low energy or down, I know that I need to get on the phone. I need to phone a friend, literally, because that fills me up. And I think that there isn't a problem that can't be solved when you bring the right people together to solve it.
being kind of that super connector woman. I feel like COVID just wrecked a lot of rhythms for people, connection. Like it's hard as hell to connect, can feel isolated. Like just thoughts, recommendations for driving more like intentional connection, whether it's within your business, external. Like
I have
thoughts, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm curious, like any encouragement for folks on that, like.
I have dedicated networking time and it's every Friday afternoon for 30 to 60 minutes. And it's a should I be reaching out to or who have I not talked to in a while that I want to get a phone chat scheduled or a coffee chat, or I'm going to do a walk and talk or something along those lines. But for me, I like knowing that I'm going to get to it because I've got that time block on the calendar to sit down and action it.
And the act of connecting for you and your leadership, like we were talking about this before, but what is the benefit to you that others could kind of take on as well?
I'm convinced that the chief marketing officer is a chief networking officer role, that it's about working across the C-suite, it's working across the functional areas of the business. And then it's also about connecting our experts to the market, to events or to speaking opportunities. So I think that it's a big web that I love to see where that leads, whether that's a new business opportunity or a win for the business, because you never know where things are going to manifest. But if you make the investment in time, it's fascinating to see where people's lives take them and how they pop up and become super helpful at a point in the future.
Ask your question about that.
Yes.
Sorry, I know you're the question.
No, go
master
for
of
it,
the
go for it.
panel. So what if you're an introvert?
So that's a very fair question because I'm a classic extrovert and it fuels me. I think that that's an interesting one to think about, that I definitely have people in my network that would consider themselves to be more introverted. But I think that connection can mean different things to different people. And I think it's about finding what feels like connection for you versus a type.
In terms of superpower, who wants to dive in there next? Jamie, you want to tackle that one? I love yours, by the way, and yours, but come on. It's okay.
I'd say that like my superpower is leading with my whole heart. So I think if my team were here to talk about how I lead, I've had a lot of really good experience of working for really, really strong leaders and also working for really, really not strong leaders. And you learn equally from both, right? And so I'd say like for me, really seeing people for who they are. Like I think in corporate, we use this like, bring your whole self to work, be authentically you, right? All the time. But I don't think we always really mean it, right? I think we sometimes mean it when it's convenient, or like if we like that style, or like that style fits with the culture. And so for me, I try to really ensure that like I'm passing the mic to everybody. If you're the quiet person in the back that doesn't like to speak up in meetings, or if you're the loud one who like wants to be the star of the show in every meeting, like equally, there's a place for you on the team. And so I think part of the superpower that I have is making sure that everyone feels seen, but also like being vulnerable enough where they can see me, right? And so really making sure that they understand that like I understand that work is not the only thing that they have in their life, and it's a big part of it, but like seeing people for who they are as humans and leading human first is really how I like to think of myself as a leader.
If I could add, there was a piece of research that came out of University of Chicago, and it was on with leaders, the importance of being known and what you choose to be known for. And I always thought that was really interesting because we all crave character, and we want to know who you are and what you're about. And I think that's important to model for our teams as well.
I love that. It's I feel like as we were talking before too, I feel like as employees or our teams have more and more options, I think it's not a nice to have. I actually think it's going to be a critical leadership just skill set mindset going forward, right? And it goes back to the question, am I like in a place where I feel like I'm being utilized and I'm alive and I'm adding value, or is, I don't want to show up anymore, right? And like, I feel like that kind of leadership is gonna bring out the best in the team and but also allow each individual person on the team to feel like they have a purpose that's connected, right? Like,
Yeah, like everything's great when like everything's great. But like when things are hard, how does the team show up, right? Like, can you have a debate on a topic where it's not personal, where you're actually talking about, we just had this as a team and like it got really like, I won't say heated, but it got really passionate. But like because of the culture that we have on our team, we were able to like, everyone could say like actually how they felt, share a difference of opinion and not make it personal. And I think creating those environments, is so important because you have to be able to get to the thing. And I think sometimes in corporate, we want to like be really precious about feelings, and that's important. Like, I'm not saying that's not important. We shouldn't hurt people's feelings, but we also need to be able to like have good conversation and like be honest and vulnerable and transparent if you choose to, in order to move topics forward, business forward, particularly in the work that we do, right? As we're consumer first innovation team, like we're thinking about real issues that consumers are going through. And you never know like how that can become personal for somebody on the team, right? And so how do you navigate those conversations and how do you create an environment where people feel safe to be able to share their point of view? And that's really the culture that I want to foster continuously and be known for.
Agree with both of you all. Leading with the heart and being the super connector. I always tell people my superpower is just building deep, authentic relationships with individuals, both personally and professionally, that then allow me to execute with impact, whether it isn't with my day job. I mean, Accenture has 750,000 people. So I'm meeting with my founders, being able to help them navigate that information ocean that is Accenture so they can find the right people, the right SME to hopefully get in front of, to hopefully get that cash and contract, as I was saying earlier, is key in being a super connector, and leading with the heart and allowing people in my life, both professionally and personally, to know my goals, aspirations, challenges, and then vice versa, always shows up in such interesting ways. As a quick example, when we were talking about our courageous moments and trying to launch My Black Skin as an example, because of some of the relationships I was able to cultivate earlier in my career, it made this business venture feel a little bit easier because I said, I had this idea, set the intention in December. I was like, I'm going to launch by Juneteenth of 2023. Talked to Soho House, which I was on the Global Inclusivity Board because another friend in London randomly remembered DE&I, that's Dejan. He needs to be on this board before you guys go public. Joined it. I said, hey, y'all, I've been thinking about launching a sun care brand. They said, great, pop up with us. They charge brands $50,000 to $100,000 to pop up. Guess how much they charged me? $0. Wow. And it was so crazy because everything just started happening so organically through all of these relationships that have been cultivating over 15 years. And then to then launch, have this great agency, shout out to Undercurrent, do that, and then telling me, hey, the NFL would be a good place for you all to activate next. I said, 70% of their players are men of color. And did you all know 15 years ago, I got a scholarship from Chicago Bears and Lovie Smith to go study entrepreneurship at Pepperdine and then went to Northwestern Law. They said, what? Oh my goodness. So when that conversation had, they said, of course you can be the official sunscreen of the NFL for the UK and Ireland market. So it was just so crazy how all of that stuff happened with minimal capital, but just the power of the relationships and people just showing up because I was sharing with them. Sometimes you want to keep things stealth mode for so long, but I said, not this third time. I'm going to share with everybody what I got going on, and I need the village to come together to make this third time be the charm. So yeah.
I think that's really important to share what your goal or what your intention is because people are rooting for you and they want to be part of what you're up to. And there's so much magic in that.
well, how much does, if you're operating from a place of purpose, you're courageously putting yourself out there, like how much does serendipity really play a role both in success and creating opportunities when you kind of have an open hand as you're approaching things, right? Like for me personally, like I know when I white knuckle grip something and try to control, like nothing happens and I feel like super frustrated. But the minute that I like have an open hand and I have confidence in my direction and where I'm trying to go, it feels better, but I also feel like I make better progress and I have more of an impact. But I'm curious, you obviously shared that, like that was a great example, but for the two of you, like how does that play? Yeah.
That so much. And I think about that just in life. Like I use that same example to people to just let it come and let it go. Right. And I agree with you wholeheartedly that the things that are for you will ultimately be for you. Right. And so if you do your part, I think it will happen, whatever that looks like. And so from my experience, I think similar to what you just said, the times that I've like, been so dogmatic about something, the role before the one that I'm in right now, I'd applied for, it was like down to like, it was between me and one other person. And the other person ended up getting it, but I was like, I had it like the grip, like so tight. And that role was not for me. Like looking back now, I would have been so miserable. And I think like that sort of open, whether it's relationships, whether it's like at work, like just being that freedom of like letting things come and go, I think is really important. I agree.
I agree with that too. And I'm reminded of a Cormac McCarthy quote. And it's, I hope I get it close enough for the group here, but it's, who knows what worse luck your bad luck saved you from?
Yeah.
That's a great example, right? If you had gotten the role, like it could have been terrible.
I'm going to transition to talk more kind of market trend stuff. Probably like 10, 15 minutes, we'll get into Q&A and we have a great panel up here. I would love some great hard questions for them. We'll split it between here in Chicago, but also virtually. So if you're on virtual, go ahead and start putting your questions out. Maybe we can start there. We have them lined up. And I'd love like when we go back to when I was talking about this being a moment, I would love for everybody as we have this part of the conversation to be thinking about whether a trend, principles around trends, like how does this apply to me right now? Could I apply the principles around great partnership to growing my brand, my business, to grow my career? Are there certain macro trends that they may talk about that they may impact either you or your company, that sort of thing. So just be thinking about through that lens. So like, I'd love to shift gears and like I was telling them just to get more macro, more trends external. And maybe we can start with you in terms of Molson Coors. What is at a macro level, like what is on the kind of the radar? I'm sure like trends we could all kind of hypothesize, but we talked about it a little bit, but what is on the radar? What are you thinking about as an innovation leader and keeping the company relevant?
Yeah, I'd say, about 4 or 5 years ago at this point, Molson moved from Molson Coors Beer Company to Molson Coors Beverage Company. And part of that was really widening the aperture in terms of like consumer motivation and what consumers are drinking and bringing us into that conversation to categories beyond beer. And so if you think about what's happening right now, we're at February 1st. So for all of those of you that did dry January, you can have a drink now. You made it. Non-alc is obviously a really big part of the conversation. And I think we've moved past it being like a trend and a fad to like it actually being a thing that's going to be around like indefinitely. And so I think that's one that like has meaningful impact and runway. I think rooted really in like people being mindful of what they're drinking, what they're consuming, health and wellness trends that have been around for many, many years. I think we're starting to see that actual impact and the importance of like having that diversified portfolio. One other one for us is, flavor's a big space, particularly with younger legal drinking age consumers who want to experiment, who want to try new things. And so we recently launched a new brand called Happy Thursday that is going to be in the market in March. Hence the big Stanley Cup up here. But it was really born out of the insight, a few insights. One, in having real conversations with consumers, one of the tensions we learned is that, there was a lot of seltzer in the market, we all know, but there were a lot of consumers that are like, I don't like the way the bubbles make me feel. Like, they're just not my jam. I don't want it, give me something else. The other thing we knew is that like discovery and flavor was happening in a major way, not just in our category, but if you look at food, if you look at other adjacent beverage spaces, et cetera, that was like a major thing. And then lastly, you can find trends anywhere. It doesn't have to be these like big, expensive consumer research studies. We do that. But I also spend a lot of time on TikTok. And so one of the things that we found out is that consumers were actually taking their seltzers and using like milk frothers to get rid of the bubbles, right? Because they didn't want it. And so we're like, how do we take these pieces of things that are happening in the real world, right? And then if you look outside of our space altogether and look at like what Starbucks and Dunkin' and some of these companies are doing with their refreshers, and we kind of put all of these pieces together, and we've created a brand that is going to be the first spiked refresher brand that's going to be in market, no carbonation, low calorie and sugar, but high flavor. So really addressing all the tensions and the pain points and leaning into future trends. So I think kind of following those red threads and like going beyond some of those obvious spaces, I think is something that's really important to us as we look towards the future.
When is it in market?
March 4th.
Very interesting. Like I love how you guys are triangulating so many different insights, because I think everything's a little bit complicated, right? But it is just put yourself out there and pay attention and be open to insights from different places, right? And yeah.
And not everything you do is going to work, right? And so like, I think one of the cool things about what I get to do is we get to take big swings. And we do a lot of work to engage with consumers, to go out and make sure we've done our best effort to make sure it's going to work. But like the cool thing about innovation is, when it's in the market, right? And you consumers will tell you, and you'll do all the things that you can to make sure that it does. But like, if you don't take the swings, you completely miss. And so that's what we get to do every day. It's fun.
Dujan, I wanted to dig in with you when you were talking about the partnerships, Soho House, and then with the NFL with My Block Skin. In your mind, like, how would you define kind of the principles behind like good partnerships? I think there's a lot of companies that are like hypothesizing and even exploring partnerships for growth. It's great avenue. But like, what do you feel like enabled those partnerships to be successful for you, like more at a principle level?
Yeah, I think it's really just making sure that you're aligning on brand values is first and foremost, and where that cross-pollination of where your company is and where there is. As an example, with the NFL, I mean, 60 or 70% of the players are melanated individuals. So the whole mission on educating people on and off the field, it was a no-brainer for the NFL. And obviously great for us as a very, very small brand to tap into their community, their fan base, leveraging their IP to help amplify and provide social proof for our brand, which is great. But then for them, it's also good social proof of supporting small, local Black-owned businesses in the UK and Ireland market. I mean, we're the only Black-owned company that is an official partner of the NFL, which is crazy to think about as they're growing internationally. And it's just cool to just see partnerships across the board, especially in CPG and beauty. I love, I was inspired even to launch this because of Supergoop and Black Girl Sunscreen. But even what Black Girl Sunscreen did with Disney around The Little Mermaid, and just having their, cross-pollination of marketing materials. What Native, if you guys have heard of Native, that's all over Target, did with Girl Scouts and their combination of flavors and scents within their shower gels. It's just really cool partnerships like that are leveraging the audiences of both brands, the brand recognition to really amplify and be innovative. And I would say that's probably one of the cool trends I'm seeing in beauty now, just around more inclusivity, more innovation in the ingredients that we use. As most people know, for so long in the sun care industry, they focused, when we talk about the Fitzpatrick scale, that's all the skin tones, it's 1 through 6. The market is primarily focused on 1 through 3. 4, 5, 6 is everyone like kind of black and brown. But I'm like, when you are more innovative and you create products that actually work for 4, 5, and 6, it then works as my tagline, from porcelain to espresso, as our sunscreen gel does. Since we have product placement up here, I'm gonna just place my black skin up here on the table too, so you all can see. Uh, But just overall, just seeing those new trends in beauty, just around ingredients that we're using, I think the US needs to catch up a little bit more, especially in the sun care, because there's been a lot going on with the FDA monogram. When you look at markets like Europe, I mean, their cosmetic standards are chef's kiss, beautiful. Switching over to the day job, as we're talking about trends, I would say one thing that is a trend that I would wear and talk about in my Accenture hat, generative AI. We've made like $1 billion investment in that with our people and helping our clients building all these generative AI studios around the world. And it's just been so cool to see over the last year and a half how it is changing the way we work, how it's making a lot of people more productive, not just in our day jobs, but people that have side hustles and want to be courageous and try to launch things on their own. Being able to utilize it in both spaces to make you a little bit more productive at work, to free up some mental capacity so that you have time at night to then do some of these other things that bring you joy and excitement outside of work. So it's been really interesting to see, from my Accenture Enterprise Tech hat, how generative AI is being so pervasive in that space, but then also in the creative industry. We're talking about the development of creative assets, scripts, videos, photos, everything. It's just gonna be really interesting to see how that changes. One, what we're doing in corporate, as far as using it as a coworker, a little side assistant, but then 2, seeing how it is going to change the way that entrepreneurs are able to scale a little bit more quickly, because they can leverage technology to do some of the mundane stuff and then free their minds to focus on partnerships, creative, and building the right relationships to grow their business.
If I could just add on with the generative AI, I mean, it certainly is the topic of the day. And it's been really interesting to me. I attended a lunch at the Museum of Contemporary Art couple months ago now, and Laurie Simmons was being honored, and she's the mom of Lena Dunham. And she was talking about how AI is her latest collaborator. And it just blew my mind to have an artist talking about AI and generative AI and the power of it, because I agree with you. I think it is our next collaborator or our next teammate. And at West Monroe, our mission is to develop the next generation of leaders. So we created our own version of ChatGPT that's called Nigel, as in NGL, Next Generation of Leaders. And it's been really interesting to see it was developed for our own people to save time and to be that collaborator. But we have clients that are saying, well, I want that. Can I buy Nigel? And so it's been really interesting to see where it's taking us, because it's going to change everything.
I'm going to ask one follow-up question on that, then I'd love to open it up for questions. So just think about it. I get the infrastructure side of it and how it's going to change everything. Like I think about, like I'm big on, I've thought a lot about like AI, Gen AI. It's like, I feel like the past decade has been a lot of incremental changes, and AI is one like disruptive, transformative force, right? And so for me, like I find myself, I'm literally feel like I'm like playing around with HTML, like way back in the 90s, right? And date myself a little bit there, but it's more like new skill development essentially, right? To understand it. And then when you understand it, you can apply it, right? And so I'm curious, like a lot of you guys have exposure to it, for the audience that may have touched it, maybe have never touched it before. What's the best way? Like for me, like I've been using ChatGPT for Sous Chef, and I'll take a picture of my pantry and fridge and build recipes off of that, and just trying to use it in my day-to-day life to understand it. But I'm
I need you to
curious.
send that to me. I need you to send that to me.
Amazing. Like literally, like if you haven't, like I'm just sharing as an example to understand it, but you can take a picture of your pantry and fridge and say, build me a menu for the week, build me a shopping list to stuff I got to order from Instacart that I don't have, and like recipes. But to me, it's an example of integrating the life. So, and it's driven by understanding. But I'm curious for folks that are just starting out with this stuff, or maybe haven't touched it, what's the best way to start to get exposure to it and start to understand how it is going to impact both personal and professional? Just any thoughts?
I've been playing around with it for writing. So I was giving a speech at an awards banquet and I was like, well, let's see what this is going to come up with. And it was fascinating to me to see the output because there are some things I was like, oh, I hate that, but I love this. And so it's creating a first draft. And I love that idea of creating that first draft and then you have a place to edit instead of create from a blank piece of paper.
Yeah, I think I've focused more on the text chat GPT because I'm not a creative and I'm like, I don't even know what to do with Midjourney and some of the other ones. So I've just been looking at prompts, just seeing and playing around with it. All right, respond to this email that my boss just sent, and use this tone of voice. And it's been cool. It's similar to, as Reese was saying, like what the response is, how I can edit, how I can just use it as a starting point. But it's just really cool to see what comes of it. So I would just say, go on ChatGPT and just type some questions in and see what happens. And the more you begin to use it, the more you can see how you can change your prompts, how you can change tone of voice, all the whole prompt engineering and all the other things that they say. There's great videos, obviously, on TikTok and YouTube, Coursera, LinkedIn, that can give you some of those one-on-one level prompts to become comfortable with it. But for the most part, just go on ChatGPT and just try it out.
All right, can we give them a round of applause before we go into Q&A? Let's start virtual.
I'll start with this first online question. It says, as individuals or organizations, how do you deal with VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous situations in your career or organizations?
Interesting.
I'm
Want to take that one?
I'm of the philosophy that you got to control your controllables and stay focused on what's within your control and build a narrative from there. Otherwise, I think it can be really easy to be overwhelmed and to share that overwhelm with others is I think you got to be careful.
Let's keep going. Right behind you here.
Hi, this is my friend from Brazil. He's courageous. First day in America. He is a Brazilian
There we
space
go.
entrepreneur.
You're in the right spot, buddy. You're in the right spot.
Yeah, and actually my son is mixed Jamaican. So I had some questions because as you've traveled, like we have an app Culture City that is also in 1871 that is for people to experience other cultures without going on an airplane. But he had to go on an airplane all the way here. So when you are trying to connect and network, what is your advice to people from around the world who want to collaborate and that don't have a lot of resources because plane tickets are so expensive, you know? So we are doing our best to learn networking culture. Business culture in Brazil is very different. And so I know it's very important to network and sometimes conferences are expensive. So any advice you have to be even more courageous like him, you know?
I'll give one quick answer and we'll keep going. I feel like in my life, when I haven't been building anything, it's been impossible to meet people. But like when I'm operating, when I'm trying to build something, whether it's I'm literally trying to understand AI, ChatGPT, and I set a learning objective for myself, or I'm trying to launch a new business, or I'm working on a project of some capacity, even if it's at work, just using that as a basis to connect with people. So it's not necessarily about the event. It's about the journey that you're on, the intention that you set for yourself, and then just using that as a basis to connect with people in your network and or around the world in Chicago. Like, but I don't know if you guys have any builds on that.
Yeah, I would offer that I like your approach because you've got a problem to be solved and then it's engaging people to do it because I think you need a goal for the networking. It can't just be about the networking. It should be about what problem are you hoping to solve or what would you like to accomplish so that it's focused.
Hey guys, how are you? I have a question around like risk and how we think about risk from entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship. I think that when I was in like a big corporation, I was like really risky, and that's kind of like why I decided to go out on my own. And now I find that I'm probably like more risk averse now as I think about my run rate and things like that. So just curious to know about how you guys think about risk and opportunity and kind of like that. Yeah, that's it.
I can start. I think for us, it's always about the profile of risk, right? There's always going to be some level of risk in every decision that we're making. The question is like, what does that profile look like and how much risk are we willing to take? And so I think you think about decisions that you have to make as you think about choices or whatever, whatever problem that you're trying to solve. I think kind of thinking about the principles of like, what are you willing to risk and like, what's your tolerance for that? Is how I would think about it. I mean, we're constantly faced with whether it's, hey, we want to look at like, what's the financial implication and how far do we want to go? What's the reputational risk and like, how do we think about that? What's the risk to the brand, if we make this decision or make this partnership or launch this new thing? And so I think it's really about what does that profile look like for your business or the work that you're working on and what's your tolerance and figuring out that sweet spot.
This being a like panel and a community on courage, I always tend to think about too of like, what's the risk of not doing something?
Yeah.
And because we can overanalyze and think all day on stuff, but if it's not a kill the company type thing and it's not a ton of effort, a lot of times there's a risk in not learning or not like creating that opportunity to grow the business or to meet somebody that could be helpful, right? So this is another maybe helpful lens on that is what's the risk of not doing this? So as you think about your thing you're going to start doing tomorrow, think about that too. So let's keep rolling. Go ahead. We got right here. Oh, sorry. We'll come back to you next, boss.
Perfect. I'll piggyback on the risk comment. I sort of have two questions. The first being in this era of gig work and side hustle. I'd love to hear, Dejan, specifically on yourself. Gail and I have both been in management consulting. I don't know how you find the time to do two businesses on the side. Or maybe you're really good at AI that's doing that side. So if you guys, for me, I'd love to be methodical about risk taking. How far can I dip my toe into another pool until I really need to jump into it? So if you have any thoughts on where to fit the side hustle in until actually making that big leap, I think that would be great. My second question is, what's a hard skill that you guys are really proud that you developed? Let's say you build all the EQ, all the soft skills, you got it. But what's a hard skill that you think you've been really proud that's helped you get to where you're at? So side hustle and hard skill.
So you're great questions. I would say for me, I'm pretty fortunate and blessed. Like I don't have a crazy management consulting role. Everything that I do is aligned in the same space. So I support Black founders and I am a Black founder. So I have really nice mental capacity to manage both of those things. And I'm not working 80 hours a week for Accenture. I know this is live streamed. I'm working the 40 hours that they pay me for. And the rest is for me. They do not have autonomy over my 168. So that's how I balance that. I set very firm boundaries on when I am working in my day job and when I'm working on my side hustles. And when I know that in this season, this is the right time to work on this side hustle, given what's happening in my personal life, that's also something you have to take consider. Are you supporting anyone financially? Do you have family members, kids on the way? Like all of those things you have to take into consideration as you are spending time on that side hustle and deciding, all right, should I turn the side hustle into a main hustle or can this just sustain on its own and then just be a supplement to the work that I get to do? Because there's a lot of people that I have at Accenture, they're like, oh, I own like 5 yoga studios on the side and I still work here. I'm like, what? That's awesome. So it all depends on the specific role you have in the organization, what you're doing and what your external personal life looks like that will then create the environment for you to sustain or not sustain a side hustle. Hard skill. I think for me, my background in trade is in finance and accounting. So I was a tax accountant and did financial modeling and all that other stuff for many years before I got into innovation and then specifically now beauty and CPG. So I think with that piece, that's been very beneficial for me and just the roles that I've had within innovation to then develop business cases if we should pursue a certain innovation initiative within our firm, or as I'm working with founders and looking at their financial models and their projections, does that make sense in an enterprise environment? Do you really think Cisco is going to pay that enterprise SaaS rate month over month? Like those sorts of hard skills for me from a financial perspective and that background, I think has been beneficial for me in my side hustle and then in the work that I do today.
Let's keep rolling. Let's take like one more and then we'll wrap. Well, we'll take two. We'll come back to you real quick.
Thank you for everything y'all said tonight. I have a two-part question. One is, as a company that is emerging or just coming up, how do you effectively choose what other companies that may exist that you want to cross-pollinate with, and just cross-market? And I'm also curious, as you're emerging, how are you discerning, like, allowing yourself to be a timeless brand while still participating in the trends that are like rapidly happening in a quick, fast-paced social world?
The latter part of that.
You know, making sure that your brand is relevant in culture is always going to be important. I think the balance is making sure that your brand purpose and what your brand stands for is really clear and not deviating from that. And I think when that's really, really clear, like, you can tap into those cultural moments that make sense for your brand. Like, I would be really careful that you don't tap into ones that like are completely irrelevant. But I think the ones that make sense, that help amplify your brand, particularly with the consumers that you're trying to reach, is absolutely what you should be doing. And it's kind of like that social currency that all brands want, right? And like, how do you stay relevant? I think the first part of that question is
Yeah.
maybe better suited for
It like what your answer though bleeds right into the first question, because a lot to me, like, and Dujan was talking about this, a lot of great partnership comes to me from, you have this conviction, understanding for the purpose of your brand and what you're building. You have clear strategies, but then you find synergistic, whether it's a channel or partners that can help you grow the business in some capacity, right? And so, like, to me, it comes down to, like, Dujan's a good example of just, do you have conviction and understanding for what you're trying to do? And then who else can help accelerate that potentially, right? And then it just comes down to chemistry and that sort of thing. All right, let's wrap. Can we give another round of applause? And then Stephanie's coming up to close us out.
I don't think you did. There we go. Okay, so who here got some wisdom today that made them think something different or is excited to kind of bring that back home? I see lots of heads shaking. Yeah, look at this. Okay, so I want to just do a quick thank you, because I don't think you guys recognize that having you on the stage has that much of an impact. So I want to just really, really say how much we appreciate you taking the time here tonight, being as open and just sharing some of your insight and some of your learnings. I know a lot of us are still trying to figure out our steps and what's next. And so hearing different perspectives, different paths, I know always resonates with me. For that though, if you found this conversation interesting, know that all of the prior conversations are recorded and available. I'm going to get it right this time because I never do. I just looked it up. It's thegaragegroup.com/CMO. If you go there, you can find all of our prior recordings.